Good evening, good evening, good evening. It is 8:30-ish and we are live. And I am too blessed to be stressed. And that is the theme for tonight's talk. I am going to be bringing my guest on in a bit, but I wanted to let you all know who she is and the topic that we are talking about today for the office hours with the College Success Professor live. It's been a while, but I'm back in full effect. And I will be going live a little bit more often, especially this month. School is ending for some schools. I know my school is ending next week. The semester is ending. I still have to go to work for those of you who are wondering. I did have a friend ask me, so does that mean you're done until January? No, people who work in colleges still have to work, but classes are going to be over like right at Thanksgiving. So I'll have a little bit more time, have some offers and some special things for the holiday season for you all. But without any further ado, let me introduce my guest, Dr. Lillian Walker Shelton, who I have known since college. We met freshman year in college, but let me read her bio before I get her on, and I will bring her up on so you can see her, and I will read her bio. So Dr. Lillian Walker Shelton is originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. While living in Philly, she developed a desire to work with multicultural populations. She's traveled to a number of different places in the Caribbean and Central America. She was also influenced by the work that she did as a community activist and organizer in Washington, D.C. Her focus was on fair wages, healthcare, and affordable housing. And she graduated from Marymount University with her PhD in the program for counselor education and supervision. So she is Dr. Lily, as I call her, but you can call her Dr. Lillian Walker Shelton. I also call her another name, but I promised I wouldn't tell that name on the air because it's a family name. So her future goal is to start a community mental health clinic, and her dissertation was on African American women and child sexual abuse. So we have a professional here, a doctor here, a family member here, and we are going to be talking about coaching and counseling. My specialty is coaching. Dr. Lily's specialty is counseling. So we're going to be talking about that today. We're going to be probably laughing and kikiing because usually that is what we do, but we're going to try to keep it professional. That's why she gave me that finger. So welcome, Dr. Lily. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so happy to have you on. We've been talking about it for so long, and I'm so happy to have you on.
Thank you indeed for that warm welcome, my sister. I have to say, I'm so happy that I am able to join you on the College Success Professor platform. I have to also say, just for a minute, how proud I am of you, and I have to acknowledge your success. I know that when I met you, and I'll say it 27 years ago, even though both of us don't look that old, that you were focused on education then, and you were focused on education and helping people from lower socioeconomic statuses obtain a good and quality education. And I've seen you progress with that and continue with that. And now, that you have the position that you've had for really over 10 years. I really do also very much consider you to be an expert. As you said, we're family. We've known each other for this long, and everything. But I have to say, I'm definitely proud of you, my sister, and I'm glad to be here this evening. Thank you.
Well, thank you for making some time. So, for those of you who are wondering why we are on so late, because Dr. Lily had a class that she had to teach. So, we will talk a little bit about that later on. But our focus, or my focus specifically, is for college students. But the topic that we're speaking on today is universal. It's applicable to whether you are in college or you're supporting a student in college. So hopefully you will get some useful information, some useful tips, some useful advice. So the first question that I ask all of my guests, and I know the story, I know it's a long story. So, can you give us a condensed version of how you transitioned from your college experience to your current career?
Oh, and I'll share the story that can be allowed on the internet because, there are parts to the story, during the 90s and the early 2000s but, I think even bringing those up, it's funny. All of those experiences, the good, the bad, everything has made me really into the person that I am today. So, I am a mental health counselor. My older brother is a social worker. His wife is a social worker, and my brother-in-law is a social worker. And I knew I wanted to go back to school to be a professional helper and everything like that. But I was like, I don't want to do the same thing that they want to do. I don't want to be a social worker. I'm going to be a counselor. And my sister-in-law likes to joke that the score is, social workers three, counselors one, money zero, because none of us make any money in the field that we're in as professional helpers. But I have done a lot of things in my life. I have been a 411 operator that if you call it 411, you would get me on the phone. I have been a child care teacher that I worked with the little people for a minute, and I've even been a community organizer and activist, which was a absolutely that was like the one of the most fulfilling careers I had in my life, working at DC Jobs with Justice. But I think what happened to really push me into counselorhood, I did a fellowship through the Alexis Knox Fellowship organization, and the next. I did a fellowship through the Younger Women's Task Force, I'm sorry, and it was called the Alexis Knox Fellowship, where I did these kind of sister circle women empowerment circles at an organization called Strive DC. Strive DC, the executive director of Strive DC was my friend Chris Hartwright. Chris unfortunately passed away earlier this year to breast cancer, but she was the type of friend like you, Phoenix, that if you said you wanted to do anything, she was like, okay, I'm going to help you do it. You want to go to the moon? Let me build you a rocket ship. So she let me come down there and do these women's empowerment circles with these women. And Strive DC is a program that helps people who really come from a lower socioeconomic status get employment. But what we were finding is that a lot of the people, their mental health issues were impeding on their ability to get employment, particularly these women who were in the sister circles with me. And I remember one girl told me, she was like, I just want to, well, two things that were very profound that the participants told me. One girl told me, I just want to make my mother proud. And I absolutely identified with that. And then this other girl told me she never went to counseling because she never saw a counselor who looked like her. And I was like, okay, I think I can be a counselor. I think I can do it. So after that, I went to Trinity Washington University and got my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. Then I started working as a community support specialist primarily in wards 7 and 8 of Washington, D.C., with people who had severe and persistent mental illness. And then I was like, well, I think I need to do a little bit more, and I want to do more research. And I also want to kind of teach. And, so what I did after that, then I went and got my doctorate, which was hard, and no more school after that. That we're done. That's it. Yeah, yeah, that's it.
Well,
Yeah.
yes, and I know there's a lot more to that story, because when students or when young people go to college from home, you mentioned, I think, three or four different pathways that you went through, and there probably was
Mhm.
even a bit more because I know there was a period where you were considering law school. So oftentimes the path, to your final destination is not a straight or linear one, and it often,
Right.
takes more time than you thought, more obstacles than you initially thought there were. So that's definitely maybe another story for another day because we're focusing
Yes.
on the topic of today. But before I move on to the topic of today, one question for those students who are maybe in psychology or in social work or in the helping professions, as you mentioned, for those students, what is, I guess, what would you say is a common misconception about what it is to be a counselor versus the reality of what the actual day-to-day work is like?
It's a when we talk about misconceptions, because I think that people will say this, that, hey, you're a good listener. You should be a counselor. Hey, you always are there to help me with my problems. You should be a counselor, and all this other kind of stuff. But the thing about it is, and we'll get into it when we talk about, counseling and coaching and all this other kind of stuff, is just that like counseling is a theory based clinical practice that, you know, you have to know a whole bunch of theories. Okay, that's number one. Number two, you have to take a whole bunch of tests. Well, actually, you just have to take two tests, but you have to take them and you have to pass them, and they're not easy. You have to maintain licensure. When you become a counselor, you become a lifelong learner. And if you don't have that commitment to lifelong learning, it may not be the right thing for you to do. And the last thing I'll say, too, I listen. I do definitely use my ears to listen, mostly as a counselor, but then also too, you have to be able to write. And writing case notes and documentation is a very big part of what I do, because I have to write a note that the insurance company will understand and pay me my money for. And if you can't do that, gonna have a problem. So that's the other thing. But yeah, these are common misconceptions that, oh, my family tells me that I can listen and I'm always there and I give good advice. Well, that's funny because I actually don't give advice. I don't give advice at all. I do clinical interventions based on theories that, I gained from all these student loans. So yeah, so that's what I do. I don't give advice. And that's another thing too. So I think that's the misperception. Until you start doing it, you're like, oh, this is hard. It is. Yeah, it's not easy. So
Excellent, excellent. I love that answer.
yeah.
And since you brought it up, could you talk about, because usually, like I said, students maybe want to major in psychology and they want to be a counselor when they graduate. Could you talk about the investment that you actually have to make with regard to loans if you actually want to do the work? Is it just the bachelor's degree?
Yeah. So the way that it is for counseling, what you would do, like my bachelor's degree is in sociology. Okay, that is very fine and good. But also with counseling, and I'll explain this in a way that really makes sense. So we are different from social workers because every state has a different licensure standard. Like in DC, I'm called a licensed professional counselor. In Maryland, I'm called a licensed clinical professional counselor. But the thing that most licenses require is a master's degree. So you have to have a master's degree, even though the state that you're in most of the time. The other reason why you have to have a master's degree to get the license is because that's how you are able to do individual therapy. You can, and even what happened in DC is that they're saying that some places, like even these core service agencies that people are working at, where they may not necessarily be doing individual therapy, they still want people to have a license to be able to work so you can bill insurance. So it basically, long story short, no master's degree, no license, and that's just how it is. So you do have to get a master's degree in order to do it in counseling.
And actually, I could go along this question path for a while, but I want to focus on the topic. So let me get to the questions that are on the topic: the difference between coaching and counseling. And you kind of went into it in your the question before this with regard to what you do, that you don't give advice and things like that. But could you give a definition? And I'm not even sure. I guess I should know since I know you. But is there a difference between a counselor and a therapist? So could you tell us, I guess it's a two-part question. What is your definition of a counselor? And is there a
Mhm.
difference between a counselor and a therapist?
Sure, sure. So the American Counseling Association, and I'm about to nerd all of you guys out, but I had to memorize this definition for my doctoral program. So the American Counseling Association defines counseling as a professional relationship between a client and a provider where we empower a client around different areas of wellness, career, family, and lifestyle. So that is basically what it is. Like that's counseling is an empowering type of relationship. What I would also add to that is that it is a clinical relationship. And when we say clinical, then we mean that it has something to do with health concerns. So I am a health care provider. When people ask me that, are you a healthcare provider? Do you work in a healthcare setting? I've been getting that question a lot when I go places because, you get COVID tested and they want to know because they're like, are you talking about physical
Hmm.
health? And I'm like, I'm not talking about physical health. I'm talking about mental health. I work in a
Hmm.
mental health setting, but so I am a healthcare provider. That is why I am able to bill insurance and do all that kind of stuff. From my understanding, because I did do a lot of research because I think you probably remember another one of the careers I had. I was a career coach for veterans. And
Hmm.
so I did a lot of research on career coaching, and I was going to even do my dissertation on that at one time. But so when we talk about coaches, and when I worked at AMVETS, even as a career coach, I was not a healthcare provider. I was like a career coach, and what I was doing was short term. It was solution focused, and it did not. It was really also too, and this is something that always got me about my veterans that really hurt me to the heart. I was only focused on one area, finding them a career, helping them with a career. And I had a lot of my vets who had PTSD and other issues that it hurt me because I wanted to help them more. But, because we were just focused on that one thing. Now, in counseling, people come to me with a whole myriad of issues. And I'm like, okay, what we gonna do this week? This week we're gonna do family. Next week we're gonna do career. Next week we're gonna do social environment. We're doing a whole bunch of different things. So that's really the difference.
Okay. I am also, and I don't know if this is a short answer or a long answer, but I also wanted to give a definition of coaching.
Mhm.
But the second part of the question, is there a difference between counseling and therapy, or being a counselor and a therapist?
Well, all let's say this. It's kind of like one of these things where they say like all therapists are not this, but all counselors are not this. So really, a lot of counselors do not do therapy. A lot of counselors do not do individual therapy. A lot of us maybe do things like case management, supervision. A fair amount of counselors are professors and everything like that. Then with therapy, you have social workers who are therapists. You have, who else? You have psychologists who are therapists. You have, different. So it really is not, the same thing. But so a lot of times people will tell me I went to counseling before and I talked to them, and it turns out what they did, they went to see someone who was a social worker before, or they went to see someone before who was a psychologist or something like that. So we're not, I that's what I do therapy, but I do have friends who don't do it. They don't do
Okay.
therapy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think your distinction with regard to what counseling and what therapy is so important. Like, you are a mental health professional.
Hmm.
You can bill insurance companies, and there are a lot
Hmm.
of differences between what a coach does and what a therapist and a professional does. And what I watch Ayanla Fix My Life all the time. I'm a fan.
Me too. Did you see the
And
one with her and Shay and Shay's brothers?
I have seen them all, yes. And I saw the one with Lunel or Lavelle. I forget her name this
I
weekend.
didn't see the one with Linnell. We have to
You
talk
should.
about that
Yes, we'll talk
offline.
about that.
Okay. Yeah.
But
Hmm.
anyway, the point was, this is the one
Yes.
where forget Keisha, the singer, her sister.
Keisha, Keisha Cole,
Yeah, Keisha Cole, her sister was on. Neffy was on.
Neffy,
Yes,
Neffy.
and Neffy, I
Hmm.
think, had depression and was bipolar. And like
Hmm.
Iyanla said it clearly, I cannot coach bipolar. I cannot coach
Mm-mm.
depression. There are certain things that you need a mental health professional to do. A
Yeah.
coach, and there are coaches in all facets or all specialty areas. I am a coach for college students, and I'm an expert in that topic. I also
Hmm.
have a business coach who can help me with, getting my business more visible and things like that. I
Hmm.
see my cousin, who I saw in the chat, hey cousin, in the health and fitness. She's my personal trainer. That is her expertise and specialty. So I focus on issues of mindset with regard to students, feeling like they don't belong, or they're imposter, or they have some self doubt and things like that. So there are definitely some mental areas that coaches can focus on with regard to mindset, but there are certain diagnosed issues that a coach cannot help you out of. I can help students with the academic challenges that are going on with college. I can help students with the transition from being at home with someone taking care of you to learning the skills that you need in order to be an adult. But there are definitely things
Hmm.
that are differences, and may need more, I would refer someone to a mental health professional if there were questions or concerns or topics that I could not address. So I would say that that is the main difference. The
Mhm.
coach can help you to be accountable. They can help you to create a plan. They can help you clarify. I know I help students clarify what their goals are, clarify if they're in the right major. And I do sometimes give advice. I often, in coaching, it's usually the thought that the student where the client is the expert in their own lives. But,
Yeah.
because I am an expert in my discipline, I can provide advice in my discipline. I'm not going to tell you what decision, I'm not going to tell you what major to major in, but I can
Mhm.
let you know about, the information that I know about the different majors. So could you also talk about why you said you don't give advice? I know why we don't necessarily
Mhm.
always give advice, because we think that the student is the expert or the client is the expert. But why do you say you don't give advice? I'm sure people were very surprised by that.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. And I want to piggyback on what you were saying, absolutely, because sometimes I would refer somebody to a coach because if someone comes to me and they have maybe an issue, like you said, that is very focused and requires a certain solution and it's short term, I would refer them to a coach rather than come to therapy. So you having that kind of us having that two-way dialogue, I think is important to know. I do this and you do that, and being able to support each other because I think that that's important. But no, part of why counselors don't give advice and we should not give advice is because of ethics. Because there are certain ethical codes. They vary from state to state, but a lot of them are the same. And even the American Counseling Association has ethical codes for us that say we want to really adhere to a client's autonomy and really promote their self efficacy. And I mean, of course, you have clients who will come in, tell me what to do. Can you tell me what to do? Or what should I do? And I'm just like, so what I have to do is use all that student loan power and just put together, use all that power from the student loans and just put together a plan to help them be able to arrive at a decision themselves because I can't tell them what to do. I can't say, you should dump, should I dump my boyfriend? And then what happens? They go home and tell the boyfriend, "Well, my counselor said I should dump you," and it's just like I didn't say that. So no, so no, so that's the thing. You have to come up. Ultimately, you have to come up with your own decisions and make up your own mind. And this is your life as a client. And although they clients pay me, to help them, I will help them in any way. I will give them resources. I will be supportive, but I don't give advice because advice really is just kind of telling them what to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. So, just checking my questions because I did have a lot for you. Um, and actually, you covered one of them with regard to one of the questions was, do you think a person could benefit from a counselor and a coach? And you did
Mhm.
definitely cover that. So that was really good. Um, so I wanted to go back to um, the actual work as a counselor. And I think oftentimes there are some misconceptions or misperceptions of what type of person needs or will benefit from counseling.
Mhm.
So could you answer that question both for students who are, about to go off to college? Oftentimes they're at a period in their life where, I mean, we talked about this also a little bit earlier, where it's a new environment, it's a new situation, and maybe there are some mental health challenges that were already present, that they'll need to navigate on their own, or there may be some new things that they don't identify or realize are mental health challenges that they may need to get some professional support for. So, can you talk about that?
Yeah, yeah. I think when I was in school, I did a research paper on the top things, the top diagnosis that students are presenting to college counseling centers with. The number one thing that students are presenting to college counseling centers with is anxiety, which you can imagine.
Yeah.
They are a lot of times in a new environment, they're away from home. They are like fish out of water. They don't know what to do. They have these classes depending on what kind of school you went to before. Maybe the professors told you, or sorry, the teachers told you before, this is due on this date. this, and they reminded you. And it's not like that in college. They tell you at the beginning of the semester when the paper is due, and you have to remember to turn it in. So it's just a very, it's a lot of anxiety. That's the number one thing that we see students presenting with at college counseling centers. The number two thing we see, which sometimes it's known, sometimes it's not, is ADHD. That, a lot of students have some type of form of ADHD, and it presents itself in varying ways. Maybe they have a learning disability. Maybe they are, having really also adjustment issues, organizational issues, all that kind of stuff may present. And I want to say this about ADHD, and also even anxiety. It's okay. And the reason why I can tell you it's okay, because I've worked with students who are dealing with that. But then also too, the other thing about it is it's very, very prominent. And it's so prominent, like I said, from the research study, that's what most of the students are coming. So if the students are feeling like I may have ADHD, I may have anxiety, I want you to know it is absolutely okay. Most college students, when they first are going in, are dealing with this too. And then the third thing is that, the third diagnosis we see with just a lot of students is just depression, homesickness, maybe they were uh, they are going through a different identity. The identity that they had before, wherever they lived at before, is really different compared to where they are now. So those are the three things that we really may see. And based on the research that I did before, that's what the three diagnoses that come up.
And this year, especially with a lot of schools online and kids are actually, going to school from their bedrooms. So I'm sure it's even, I'm sure I've seen data that it's even stronger now. So for parents who are at home, and I've heard parents talk now about how their seniors missed out on prom, they missed out on their freshman year, they missed out on all these things, and they're going to school online. It's just not the expectation that they had for what their life would be like at this point. Do you have any guidance or advice for parents with
Mhm.
regard to recommending or identifying if their child is at a point where they need to seek some professional help?
Yeah, I think the thing about it is that this is the thing I will absolutely tell you, and I say this too, kind of based on that Ilyana episode with Shay and her mom and them, because I just watched it last night. Okay, no one is blaming you. Okay, we are not blaming you, and I think that's what comes up a lot of times. Parents are like, where did I go wrong? What did I do wrong? I'm wrong. This is my child. I did this. No one is saying that, okay, at all. When we talk about especially things like ADHD, well, really ADHD, anxiety, and even depression, they can be nature or nurture. They can be caused by a genetic component, or they can just be caused by, well, I think ADHD, the research is still out, but it can still be environmental that your child has developed these things. So no one is blaming you. So once we take the blame off of you, and then even if you want to come to counseling and talk to someone about how you blame yourself about it, you can do that. But, don't blame yourself for that. That's the first thing. The second thing is, utilize your health insurance to get a counselor for yourself and get a counselor for your child. Utilize your health insurance, utilize, maybe just any of your different resources that are there, and just know that this is a process. Also know, and this is something I would be remiss if I didn't mention it. If your child is over 18 and comes to counseling, your child is an adult, and that's them as an adult entering into counseling. So they have to also want to come. You can't bring them there and just drop them off in my office. They have to want to come to counseling. So don't, you can't do that. So that's another thing to consider. But I think going back to even what you were saying a little bit earlier, who comes to counseling? Everybody comes. Jay-Z said that he went to counseling for a while because of the things that he was dealing with, and they showed up in his marriage with Beyonce. So if Jigga can do it, we can do it. Michelle Obama said that she went to
Hmm.
counseling. Like everyone, everyone goes to counseling. It's okay. I'm glad that the stigma around it has diminished a lot. And, people are like, well, I don't want somebody telling me what to do. I've just explained, I'm not going to be telling you what to do. You're going to come to a conclusion. But, I think it's just beneficial because you will have people who have held on to things so tight for so long, and they need to express them and tell them, come to counseling. It's a safe and a confidential environment. And, so that's what I would just say.
And following up with that, so sometimes people also have the misconception that, you'll have to be in counseling for years and years. Is it a
Mhm.
lifetime commitment, like once you start going?
No, no, and it shouldn't be. It really shouldn't be. I was talking to my career counseling class tonight about that, about how, you as a counselor, we should be doing evaluations. So we should say, how is the client doing at the beginning? Then maybe do another different formative evaluation in the middle, and then do a formative evaluation at the end. But we should be evaluating how the client is doing to see if the techniques we are using are working. And if they're not, then we need to change what we're doing, refer them to another counselor, or even get help through supervision ourselves, because it's like they shouldn't be coming that long. It should not be like 20 some years that you're going to therapy. That's not.
Right. And so also along those lines, how can someone identify who is a good counselor? So,
Mhm.
I'll make the comparison to when I'm working with students at my university, and they need support in a subject, and they go to a student, because we use peer tutors, or a professional in our offices, and they don't click. It's not a good relationship. And so they say,
Mhm.
oh, it doesn't work, I'm not going to do it. We say, okay, have you tried another student who has a different strategy or technique or style of, presenting the information? Instead of, just giving up on the whole process, try a different person. So how does that relate, or is that similar? What are some qualities?
There,
I guess the question is, how do you identify a person as a good counselor or a good fit for you?
absolutely. And it is very similar to what you said. If you go to a helper, professional helper, and you don't click with that person, don't give up. Go seek another one. And I know it's hard, and I know a lot of times you're like, oh, well, I'm stressed out already and I don't feel like keep telling my story. And but the story doesn't change if you don't get any help. And that's just the thing about it. You have to still get some assistance. And I've heard of people mention that they have interviewed counselors. I've heard about people mention that, they want a counselor from a background that's an ethnic background that's similar to them. I've heard people say that, based on what they think they have going on, they want a counselor who uses a certain kind of theory. Like some people want, counselors who use like cognitive behavioral therapy, like I use, and, or counselors who, some people are like, I want an unconventional counselor. I don't want to talk. I want to do something like, I've heard of a counselor who does body work, and you can do, beat up a desk. Um, my mentor, Dr. Elizabeth N. Yang, she does counseling, but she also does Tai Chi. So if you're a person who wants to, do Tai Chi while you're counseling, or you have an interest in that, you're like, well, I'm going to go see her. So I think that that's the thing about it. But if it doesn't work, then yeah, and that's really with any healthcare provider. If you go to the doctor and you don't like the way the doctor is acting, go to another doctor. You don't have to go to that doctor. Trust me, medical schools graduate thousands of people a year, so it's okay.
I love that quote that you made, and I wanted to attribute it to you, or let me know if you know who said it. The story doesn't change if you don't get any help. Is that a
Um,
Dr. Lilly?
I don't know. It might have been Maya Angelou or Toni Morrison or something. I don't know. It might have been Oyana Bonzon. I mean, for real. It could have, but because it's just true.
It
It's
is
just true.
true.
The story doesn't change, and and I think what we look at too, which is so funny. some people don't want the story to change. They'll tell you, I want to do something different and I'm unhappy. But once you start really digging into it, they are so maybe wedded to what is going on that it's so hard for them to change. So yeah, but no, it definitely won't change if you don't get any help. That's the problem.
And that is so true. Even at the
Yeah.
college level, like the situation I was just talking about with getting, the support services which are available at college for free. You don't even have to go through your insurance usually. So you're in the class, you're getting bad grades. You don't like the material, but instead of talking to the professor, instead of getting tutoring, instead of looking for online resources or ways to learn, you just want to keep the same thing that you're doing. If you don't
Mhm.
change the story, it's not going to, if you don't do something differently, if you don't change your story or your actions, then, the story is not going to change. So I love that. So I'm going to attribute it to you. I may Google it to make sure.
Via
But
Maya Angelou, via I don't know. Oh
all right.
no.
So let me continue with my questions.
Yes.
So with regard to, and I had a post about this. I wish I could bring it up, but I can't. Um, when you are either in your personal life, for those of you who are not necessarily looking for advice or working with college students, and you are in relationship with someone who you think would benefit from counseling or therapy, and that is, I guess, a loaded recommendation for some people. So
Mhm.
do you have any advice or a way that a person can gently, kindly recommend or suggest that a person get some professional help for whatever challenges or difficulties that they're going through?
Yeah, and I think, I will say this, that, there's always a nice way to say anything. I believe that, and that's not even counseling. That's something I kind of got from my grandmother because she always had a nice way to say anything, and everything. And I really learned that from her. But I think what I have seen is going back to that whole autonomy and self-efficacy thing. You can broach people in such a way to say, like, okay, well, how do you feel about counseling? And and just hear what they have to say, and they'd be like, I don't like it. The counselor is a shrink, they're a head doctor, all this other kind of stuff. And you can be like, well, I actually saw this video the other day with the college success professor and Dr. Walker Shelton, and they both seem to be really cool, and I like them, and they were not. Let me show you the video. At least, let me show you that, and then after that you tell me what you think, and then they tell you what you think, because you can't really, now you can't force people to go to counseling. You just can't. People have to come up with it on their own. But I think getting their buy-in, getting their idea, letting them know that you heard them. And then the other important thing to denote about like counseling with people is that, like, I am a professional helper with boundaries and limits, and I am available between pretty much probably business hours for an hour a week. I am not my client's friend. They are not hanging out with me. They are not coming to Thanksgiving or Christmas. I am only communicating with them about things, about appointments. I am a paid professional helper. And it's like, what happens with a lot of times people, family, they'll get really wore out because the client
Mm-hmm.
needs, the family member needs a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that could be another approach too, that, you can say, like, I really love you, but I feel like I have reached the end of how I can help you. And I want to tell you this. Maybe if you go to a therapist, they can help you the way that you need to be helped. I can help you in this way. I can help you bringing you groceries and driving you places. I can help you in that way, but I can't help you in the way that a therapist can help you.
I
And
love it.
trust me, folks, I'm telling you, I got a lot of student loans, so I should be able to help, okay? Now, if you have the amount of student loans that I have, maybe you too can help. But at that point, you should also be a therapist, okay? Shoot.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, since you brought that up, I have another question.
Yes.
But let me since you keep bringing it up, because
Yes.
one of the one of the reasons why it's funny, it's not
Mhm.
funny. It's not funny. The
Mhm.
amount of student loan debt is not funny. Student loan debt in general is not funny. But
Well,
one of the reasons why I am in business and why I want to coach students with regard to helping them get clarity with regard to what they want and making sure that they're happy and fulfilled with, what they do after graduation is because of that very thing.
mm,
When you are undecided and take the time to go to this academic program and this academic program, it can cost money and you can build up a lot of student loan debt. And Dr. Lee told you in her opening story about the different pathways that she went through to actually find what she's actually meant and called to do. So if you want to go into what happened during your freshman year of college, feel free. If not, um, so why or how your pathway, like I don't forget, what was your first major when you went to college? Do you
business
remember?
administration.
All
Business
right.
administration. Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
why do you think
Mhm.
that that wasn't successful for you?
Because I didn't want to do it. I mean, like, I think like if you look at it, I didn't want to, like, I didn't, and and I will say what I can say because I will say that I know that I posted this link on my professional Facebook page, and I know that maybe some of my students are watching this and some of my clients are
Uh,
watching this, and as you know, they are not my friend.
no, they are not.
But they're not, so a lot of my personal business, they're not privy to that.
Yes.
But I will say, that yeah, no, I didn't want to do it. And what I think a lot of times too is very interesting. And I reflect back and I think about, all those 27 years ago that we met and how I was at Morgan State University and my major was fun. And they don't offer the major of fun at Morgan State University. So I had to go home. But
Yeah,
I look at I was majoring in fun. I was a very fun girl. But
you still are.
and it helps. It helps. It helps. But I will say that I think that a lot of times we take kids to college, they don't know what they want to do. I didn't know
Hmm.
what I wanted to do. I mean, and this is just common information that can be guarded off the internet. I went to a all girls Catholic school and wore a polyester uniform for 4 years. And I went away to college at Morgan State University, HBCU in Baltimore, Maryland. Okay, in 1993, when the song "It's Time for the Percolator" first came out, and I had a ball, and and it was just like, well, what are you here for? And to do the percolator. I mean, like what are you here for? To wear Daisy Duke shorts? What are you here for? To look cute? And I think that was the thing. Like and so I wanted to go to school for business administration, but I really and honestly, I think at that point, like we were talking about that earlier with students going to school and just the whole thing about depression and your identity, I can actually processing it with you right now and thinking in retrospect, I think I went through a very big identity crisis where it was like, before I was in Philadelphia, I was a Catholic schoolgirl and living in the house with my parents, and that's my identity. My identity was actually very much dictated to me by my mother
Hmm.
than going to college, and it's like, well, who are you? And what I did, which is what we all did, we got together with folks who were similar to us. So all the
Hmm.
Philly clique, we all, who are we? We're from Philly. That's who we are. We eat cheesesteaks, we say Johns, we wear Timberlands, we wrap our hair. You know what I mean? That's who we are. But I think that no, I really had a very big identity crisis, probably like a lot of students have. So yeah,
Excellent. So yeah, so
yeah.
that I know the specifics of the story, and I am in no way trying to share Dr. Lily's business, but I thought the lesson was valuable and important because there are so many students who go through the identity crisis who are in school and have a major that they just check the box off, in the admissions application, but they don't really have a commitment. They don't really know, if they
Uh,
want to be in business. And obviously, you didn't really want to be in business.
hmm.
So having clarity, figuring out what your goals are, knowing why you're there, understanding why you're there, these are things that coaching can help you with. So
Mhm.
that, thank you for sharing that. I know we
Yes.
didn't talk about that in advance. So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. Let's
Yeah.
get
That's as
back. Good,
yes.
good.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's as much as I'm going to share about that too.
Yes,
You know,
no, and
like
we don't
that's
need. I think
yeah.
that was the point, that's all we needed to say about it. So let's get back to another TV show that I know we like. Back to the
Yeah.
main point of the actual video, and I think this may
Yes.
be my
Yes.
last or second to last question. So, with regard to the conversation we were just having before we went off on that tangent, about suggesting or recommending that a loved one or someone get counseling. So, in the show we were just talking about, The Real Housewives of Potomac, Karen wanted to have some counseling or therapy with her husband, Ray. But Ray was resistant to, he's old school, he's an older gentleman, resistant to wanting to go to see a counselor or a therapist. So she decided to do a coach or a life coach instead. What do you think about that as a strategy for getting someone the support that they need?
Girl, I have to tell you, this is absolutely funny because I don't think I told you this. I don't think okay. The woman who did their coaching
Hmm.
is my Reiki teacher. See, I am a Reiki master. Best shout out to Ava Laura coaching and everything like that. And I am a Reiki master. I know how to do Reiki. I keep my Reiki separate from my counseling and everything like that. But yes, the woman they went to is my actual Reiki teacher. So like when I knew she was going to be on there because she's like also my colleague. And I was like, hey, that's Ava Laura and everything. But I think, in that situation too, it was really kind of like what we were talking about earlier, that what they were really focused on very much was a short term solution to what was going on. Also, too, because I know Ava Laura, and best shout out if she's watching this girl, but I also know what she did was something that we necessarily may not do all the time in counseling is incorporate these other kind of holistic kind of interventions into the therapy, which I know she does because she is a very good Reiki master and a great Reiki teacher. So I think that was really it's very frequently it's really what the client needs. It's what the client needs. And if the client needs a coach at that moment who is also going to have them do some like methods that are kind of like also energy based and physical based, that's the best thing because ultimately what we should be focused on as professional helpers is helping and
Hmm.
helping clients heal. So that is the thing there. But yeah, I was like, that is too funny. Yeah, they did the best thing I think for their situation considering. And it seemed like it was a great outcome.
Yeah, great.
Yes.
All right, so I'm just going to ask two more questions because I don't want to keep you for more than an hour. I know you've had a very long day with teaching and working and
And I'll
counseling.
probably still talk to you after this is over
Yes,
anyway.
and we have to catch up on
Yes.
the things that are not for public consumption.
The
Um,
live is ending at 9:30. The live is ending at 9:30. Okay, so yes, go ahead. Yes.
all right, so um, sorry, I think that's a question already asked. Okay, so when I know you are definitely a fan of recommending, I forget the website, but for people who are interested in finding African American women or people who look like them as counselors, what is that website that you often refer people to?
I'm going to put it in the private chat so you can share it, but it's called
Okay.
Therapy for Black Girls.
Hmm.
And I am one of the Black girls who's a therapist who's listed on there. And, it's a great resource for African American women. I think that they are national, that they have a great great amount of counselors and all across the United States. I don't know about the middle part of our country where it tends to be less populated, but I think in other places they have a lot of different resources. Dr. Joy, who started it, is an Atlanta-based psychologist. She's wonderful. She also does a podcast about different mental health issues. So I really do recommend people check out Therapy for Black Girls. Absolutely.
All right, so I have just posted that. So if you just in the Googler, um, as Wendy Williams says, in the Googler, put in therapy for Black girls, and you should definitely be able to find someone to help you. What about if you're not a Black girl?
Well, if you're not a Black girl, then you can also go to Psychology Today. And Psychology Today has a vast, vast, vast listing of therapists that are available. However, where I usually tell people to start is with your health insurance because therapy can be expensive. And if you want to find someone who takes your insurance, you just go that way. And the same way you would find a provider like a podiatrist or find a dermatologist, you can also find a mental health provider through your health insurance. Otherwise, you can look on Psychology Today to find someone too who also takes your health insurance.
Excellent. And so my last question, or I guess technically, since I said I was only asking two more, but I just thought about this since you were referencing the class that you are teaching. Um, was a career counseling class,
Mhm.
and during our current situation, jobs are being lost, people are being
Yeah.
fired, things like that. And career counseling or career coaching is in demand. Do you have any advice for people with regard to, I guess, whether they get a career coach or a career counselor, how to see what is, or how to know which is best for them? Is it a matter of, if it's a career counselor, they can use their insurance to get that service, or what would be the benefits and the pros and cons of going to one versus the other?
Very good question. Very good. So, looking at first career coaching. So, career coaching a lot of times can be provided through your neighborhood or community employment service for free. Like in Maryland, we have the Montgomery One Stop where they have like career coaches that are there that can help you. And also too, it may be very short term, and also what it's going to probably be is very focused. So like the career coach is going to help you on your resume, help you on interview skills, give you different job leads, that kind of stuff. Now, if you are a person, however, who has some type of underlying anxiety around getting a job, and that has proven, as an obstacle, or maybe you're depressed from a layoff, or some other kind of suspected or even confirmed mental health issue, you may want to see if you can go through your insurance to actually get a counselor to help you with that and help you manage that. Because from even the collaborations that I've done with some of the career coaches at this One Stop and everything, they are just not equipped to help you with that. And so that's the thing. So you have to just really maybe go to a mental health provider. Yeah.
And also on the same line, like if you are in an industry which they say will be severely impacted by COVID, like the jobs aren't coming back, and you may
Mhm.
need to change career direction, which would be a better option, the counselor or the coach, in your opinion?
It might be, if you could utilize both. Because if you're dealing with depression and anxiety about having to change a career and coming out of a job that you love and everything like that, or, the career counselor can help you with that. But if you are someone who's like, okay, well, I need leads, I need information, I need, someone to do like that, is where the career coach will come in and will be able to help you.
Excellent. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that was my last question. We want to make sure that we are within our time, our allotted time hour. Did you want to share any information about yourself, or anything that you wanted to, your book, or anything that you have going on with those who are watching?
I just have to say, like, I think I'm definitely blessed. I think besides doing counseling, I have also written a science fiction book that's available. You can check it out. It's called Amelia's Song. It's based a lot on the travels that I have done in, Central America and the Caribbean, and also my work as a community organizer. But it's absolutely fictitious. It's science fiction. Please check that out. But I think the last plug that I want to really have is just for counseling. If you think you want to go to counseling, if you think that a loved one needs to go to counseling, please, check it out. Try to tap into those resources. We know that early intervention is very helpful, and can help with things that people are dealing with. So, the counselor is a nice person. Well, and just it's okay. It's all right. Just definitely check it out. And you can also do your research. But the counselor should be there for you because you're the client. Okay, so that's the thing. So I would say check it out in that way. But definitely, oh, the last thing I'll say too, and many of mental health issues that we also deal with, they do show up in our behavior and our thoughts, but also they show up physically and everything like that, and they come to fruition in different physical forms. Like, so, okay, we can bring it back to another housewife thing. I don't know if you've been watching The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City.
I did see that first episode for sure.
I believe Mary, a lot of those physical health issues she has is something dealing with, like, oh yeah, see, you got the body keep score. Absolutely. I think that Mary's issues, I think, are related to mental stuff. I don't know. I cannot say, but based on what has been said and basically shown so far, I'm like, I wonder if it is some kind of psychosomatic issues that
Hmm.
she's really having. The Body Keeps Score is an excellent book by Dr. Vessel von Kirk. I love it. It talks about PTSD and how PTSD is not something that just happens to people who are soldiers in the war. It can happen to really anyone who's had significant trauma in their life.
Yes. And that maybe we'll talk about that on another episode. But
Yes.
oftentimes, I don't know if you're for those of you who are watching, are you if you are, a fan of coaching and coaches as I am. But one of the questions that sometimes coaches will ask you is, if you're having an emotion or a feeling about something, like where in your body is this happening for you? I know when I did the Brene Brown Dare to
Hmm.
Lead training, that was definitely an integral part of that, the feelings of shame and doubt and guilt and things like that. That was one of the questions that she kept, where exactly are you feeling this in your body? So that book is definitely a good book and a good resource. And definitely coaching, therapy, whatever you need, whether it's a short term issue or a mental health challenge that you're facing, definitely get the support that you need. We are all, going through difficult, challenging
Yeah.
times, and there's support and resources out there to help you, get through this year and make next year even better. So I
Yes.
hope you enjoyed this talk today. Thank you again, Dr. Lilly, for having this conversation with us. You clarified a lot of things for me. I hope you clarified a lot of things for those who are watching. If you're watching this on a replay, hit hashtag replay, share this. I think I got dinged by Facebook. You're not supposed to say that. Send this to anyone that you think would find benefit from it. It's okay if it gets dinged by Facebook, but if the person needs the information, if the person would benefit from this information, definitely send it to them. So thank you again. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good evening.